Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we are very lucky to have back with us, but for the first time on video, Will Lindus of the Movie Bears podcast.
Yay! Gosh, I am so happy to be here with you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun.
We are so happy to have you. So for people who are not used to your handsome face and your beautiful voice and your amazingly nuanced opinions, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Will?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, my name's Will Lindus. I'm one of the hosts of the Movie Bears podcast. We are a trio of husky, hairy, huggable homos who talk about movie news, movie new releases, festival coverage, things along those lines. We stream live almost every Tuesday night. So for anyone who wants to tune in and get your double fix of Bears, you can do movies on Tuesdays, comic books on Thursdays, and you're a winner if you do that in my book. Other than that, I'm also a big comic book movie and comic book aficionado. So I'm really glad that we're able to do this super heroic crossover episode, and I can talk about the page instead of the screen.
That is so cool. Again, my favorite experience being a guest on your show was talking about a non-comic book movie that one time. So I am hoping that you're going to have a very similar fun experience with us tonight.
I think I am. It's not just superheroes and capes and tights. That we may have some other things. I may have some other things to bring to the table that are a little outside of the wheelhouse.
Nice.
But capes and tights are cool too.
We're not
making fun of people who like capes and tights.
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm a slut for X-Men, so yes.
Yeah.
I think we're all sluts for X-Men, really.
That's the name of the show.
Yeah,
Sluts for X-Men. I also like your new handle there. That seems It's a treat for the people watching, I guess.
We're always happy to have a hairless bear join us.
Yeah, it's all part of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Even ones with an ab.
Yeah. Whoa, we've got guests already.
We've got David Toby who's joined us. Hey, gentlemen. Hello, David. David, I don't know if did we mention it last time that a certain gentleman's comic book that we may have talked about on this show was a answer on Jeopardy?
Yes.
Yes.
Very nice.
Nottingham was an answer on Jeopardy that somebody got. Somebody was like right on it right away, which was really awesome, and I was like so excited to watch the clip. So, yeah, congratulations, David. But yeah, I mean, we've of course every time we have a guest on, we talk about sort of the origins of comics. But should we do that this time, Bill? Because I think Will's been on before.
Yeah, not with the veterans.
Yeah, the veterans. You've been here before. You know this.
I'm old hat.
Yeah. But also, I mean, from day one, Movie Bears has been a brother podcast, and it's he's on a different level.
Yes, it's
true.
No offense to other guests, but this is something different.
Comic book bears and movie bears. Yes, you're right. Like, we go back. I mean, literally years upon years upon years. I mean, are we talking decade? Are we talking a decade now? We're pretty damn close to it.
What was the first? Man of Steel? I think.
Yeah, I think.
I think it goes back to Man of Steel. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That was close to the beginning of the century.
Our relationship has lasted longer than the entire Snyderverse.
Yeah.
Well.
True.
I was just wondering, with that, is there any Gamer Bear podcast? Is there? Because
I mean, there should be.
I'd be very surprised if there wasn't.
I'm sure there is.
Just to bring,
Although most of the Gamer Bears that I know, like, I'm in like Bearsby Gaming on Facebook. If anyone's a gamer and wants to be a part of that, most of the bears that I see that are part of this community are more like Twitch streamers and things along
Yeah.
those lines. I think that's
Okay.
that's the lane for a lot of them.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a podcast somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Just,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Maybe bring someone else Hayes into the fraternity here, but
You
Just an
like
idea.
that there video games? I see you're also a bear. Well, why don't you just come in and join us for a bit? That'll be fun.
all right. Well, why don't we just jump right into it? And this was a week with two pieces of fairly controversial news. Let's put it that way. The one I think we should just get out of the way first is today and this was a big surprise about Chip Zdarsky being announced as the new writer on Batman. Because I think everybody was expecting Joshua Williamson to be on the title at least for a year. But again, you're also talking about somebody who has a very full plate who, though he doesn't have the title, is effectively the COO. No, CCO, sorry about that. Different area of corporate that I was dealing with today. So that was a big surprise, and I know he's really a polarizing figure, and he's got to be like the most goofy, charming, polarizing figure out there. You know that.
Yeah.
I always get surprised at the level of vitriol that gets thrown at him, because it seems like even if you don't like his work, he's such an amiable guy that you just say, "Hey, I don't like his work." But some people take it another step.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
get it either.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Even his writing. I mean, he's written stories I don't care for, but that doesn't mean his stories are still good. I mean, some of his Flash stuff was up and down, but I mean, even though it wasn't my cup of tea, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. I don't understand like the level of hate. Like that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've always sort of pictured Zdarsky as more of like more of a humorist, but that's just kind of the books that he really cut his teeth on, and that really gave him a big name. Especially stuff that he put out with Matt Fraction, all the sex criminals, and
Yeah.
I loved Kaptara. I thought that was one of those series that I just wanted to keep going and going and going, and he just he stopped, sadly.
My
but,
favorite was Marvel 2-in-1.
Yes.
When they were Fantastic Four list for a time. And, Dan Slott looked like a great pick for Fantastic Four on paper, but doesn't work. And if Zdarsky had gotten that gig, I would have been very, very happy. Just from the evidence that we had in those 11, 12, 13 issues.
Yeah, Zdarsky, he's did it. So, we do have another person joining, Tony Gilkinson. Hey, Comic Book Bears! Oh, wait, hey, Will, too!
Hey, Tony!
Yes. And John Runyon, of course, Comic Book Bears plus a Movie Bear assembled. Yes, thank you so much, John.
Yep.
But yeah,
I gave my first comic book lookers assemble last night.
Ooh,
on the
nice.
show. Yeah,
that's right,
Haven't
on
done that
Wednesdays.
before. Yep. So
Comic
a little
book
plug
look.
for that gentleman's show.
Yeah.
But the bigger piece of news, oh boy. Steve, you take the newscaster slot. You go with it, because
Well,
I don't know where
nothing.
to start. I really don't know.
Nothing much happened other than Amazon, who has owned Comixology for a long time. Comixology being basically, I would say probably the best, or maybe not the best, but like the most comprehensive comic book app and purchasing and reading service. And it's been around for years. It has everything that Marvel Unlimited has and the DCU has, and is a really great platform for independent writers and artists that are putting out their own books. Has just really great program. Their Comixology Unlimited has been around for a long time, which is really fantastic, and I've actually been a subscriber for a very long time. Well, Amazon had decided that it was too user-friendly and was potentially giving the creators, especially the independent creators that used it as a publishing platform or, like a way to get new readership, it was making it too attractive for them and making it too profitable for them. So decided to change everything. So overseas users had their subscriptions canceled. Current users in the U.S., their subscriptions, I guess, are still going. Unlimited service is still there for $10 a month, but they've been trying to, and I think with this new process, trying to integrate it more into the Kindle reader program. And there have been some interesting changes to the app and the readability of comics using Comixology. And I think we had some people who had some recent experience trying to read anything on the app. And it basically, I think my response to it is, it feels like reading digital comics in the late 90s. Where you had basically a scan of a page on a monitor with no way of reading it very nicely.
It was like crossgen.com.
Yes, very much like that, which was a great early effort. This is not an early effort. This is, after years of having a program that worked really well, allowed people to zoom in, read panel to panel, and it did it in the right order, and provided a great way to read comics and to experience comics digitally, whether on your phone or your tablet or even on a computer monitor. And unfortunately, Amazon broke it, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be putting it back anytime soon.
No, and the thing is there's no reason why. Like you said, they already owned it. It worked fine.
Yeah.
I used it. I went in there and I paid with my Amazon account. I logged in with my Amazon account, and it was all wonderful. Like you said, the format, the readability was great. I don't do the panel by panel thing because I hate it. But like even if there was something I needed to see, I could zoom in. My laptop doubled as a tablet, so I could tap in and just it was wonderful. And like the new format, you can't zoom in, you can't focus on anything. It is the most abhorrent reading experience that I think I've ever had. And unfortunately I have to continue to use it for, podcasts and everything else and stuff I can't get my hands on. But there is a course that we take in a law school called Intentional Torts, which is really cool because now I know the names of everything I want to do to whoever made this stupid fucking decision.
Was that my flashback face?
That was your flashback face.
Yeah, that was you. That was PTSD. Just 100. Like it is.
The movie running in your head.
Torts wasn't so bad. It's a first year course. They ease you in, but
It's not a great experience, this whole Comixology thing, because for me, Comixology was a great way for me to do two things. One, it was a great way for me to connect with comic books in time 2 years ago when I didn't feel comfortable leaving my house to go to a public place, right? So I was able to keep up with comic books, and honestly, it was around the same time that all of the Hickman, X-Men, Krakoa stuff was happening as well, and it helped me keep up with all of that stuff until I could no longer keep up with it. But the other thing about it too is it made it really convenient to find indie titles and other things as well, because there was always something on the side of the shop screen that I could very easily draw. Oh, it's cover art over there. Oh, that's another thing by this artist that I like. And now some of that stuff still kind of exists in there, but I tried to read the new Cena Grace, Rockstar and Softboy earlier today, and the very first page of it, spoilers? Not really. Just has a bunch of text about the two main characters, and there's a lot of text. And when you double click it to zoom in, it takes the screen from this big to this big. It goes forward just maybe from a size 5 font to a size 6 font. I read them on my computer screen, monitor, so I don't have the Kindle to shove in my face and do all of that with. It made that first panel, no matter what I did, it was unreadable. I had to go, the rest of the book was much more readable, but the thing that introduced the two characters was a complete waste of space for me. That sucks. That should not be the way that this works.
No, I mean, 100%. And Brian, if Brian Pittard were here, I mean, he has also been consuming his comics digitally for the past couple of years because he's, he got rid of, well, not, completely got rid of anything that's, actual floppies or trays. He still has a lot of that, but, to keep up with his comics, Yeah, he downsized and he goes digital for his weeklies. Whatever he's picking up, he's getting digitally because it's a lot easier for him to be able to store something on a tablet rather than. And this is going to be for somebody who relies a lot on digital. I mean, if your experience is garbage, you're not going to want to do that, or at least use this platform for doing that. And
I was talking with somebody yesterday who said, "Look, in all honesty, I've had better experiences reading pirated comics."
Yeah,
and that's sad.
Yeah,
that's terrible for the industry, right?
Yeah. If I can just interject here, apart from the issues we've mentioned here about the readability, for me, the more frustrating thing has been that you can't have a view where you can see all the new releases in the given week. There's a featured option, but it's very limited. And beyond that, I also used to love, the sales were so easily accessible on Comixology. The free comics were so easily accessible. Accessing it's impossible to access your wish list now. There is a new one that comes up like an Amazon wish list, but it ain't in the order I had, that's for sure. And I think that's me using ain't comes back to the key issue here was don't fix what ain't broke.
Right.
The what we had was fine. I did hear rumors of a conference call between Image, DC, Marvel, and Amazon earlier in the week, so I don't know if anything's gonna come of that. But you're talking about something that, for the first time ever, I don't think there's anybody who is a proponent of the Comixology Amazon changes. This is universally viewed as a bad move.
So I have kind of two questions before we move off on this. The first one being, have any of you checked your lists as far as your purchased comics to see if they're all there? Because I haven't, but I've spoken to several people who said, "Hey, look, stuff that I purchased that I paid for is not saved in here. I don't know where it is. I can't get to it."
In terms of the big two, it's all there.
Okay,
but you also have thank God for the Marvel app. Thank God that's still there, because I would really be losing my shit if that wasn't there right now. I don't know, because I'm like the king of the free purchase. I've Thor comics in Polish. If it's free, like.
Well, like I have some manga saved on there. I've got a lot of the Meta Barons that I've purchased on there. Stuff that I haven't gotten around reading. Like I said, I haven't looked because, number one, I got so frustrated trying to find the one comic that I did buy the other day and having to go through 4 steps that I just said, no, I'm reading this and I'm done. I don't like. I was viscerally mad. So, but my second question. Has Scott Snyder said anything about this? Because Scott Snyder just signed a very big deal with Comixology. Like he just he just signed a major money deal with Comixology, then like a week later they nuked it. So I'm curious to see what his opinion is on that, because they seriously screwed him on his deal, on his contract, if they are not going to fix this.
Yeah, don't know. I don't see anything, but also it's like, and this came up today about certain creators with Substack have become a non-event, and they're just not on the platform. They're just not there. And thank God for Grant Morrison right now, because at least we're getting those entertaining war stories.
His newsletter, I have to say, was when they started posting quotes from that.
The other thing is there's also a very different submission process now too, and it's not as much money for independent books that are going to be coming. So the 53.5 cents that come to myself and Mark Parman every so often with Crime Fighter Inquiry, I'm just wondering, for somebody who submits a new book, how often those payments are and things along those lines, because that's also the Amazon Kindle Submit counterpart. That's ridiculously hard to maneuver. Caleb, I know you're going through the law school, the bar admission process right now. the application for that, you would rather go through that than go through the Kindle Submit.
I've heard, I've heard other people say that same thing. So it again, and if there was a reason behind it, I would be more lenient and I'd be more forgiving. But there is no apparent reason. They just made a decision to make something worse that was inside their wheelhouse already, and it makes it makes no sense.
And also, it made no sense with if they did come up with some kind of argument about alignment. It was already aligned, like you said. You signed in on your Amazon thing, and everything was fine. Nothing was ever an issue. Every so often there would be like, oh shit, I missed that sale. That was about it with Comixology.
And I'm sure there's a not small part of this. This is based off, and Google does this all the time, where they have the product that isn't doing exactly what they want it to do. For whatever reason, not necessarily that it's not working, but because it's not. So then they change something else to try to force fit it. And I wonder how much of this is like trying to boost the prestige of Kindle. I think it backfired very obviously, but I think pushing people more over into the Kindle direction might have been like where someone originally had the idea and started pushing it through without thinking through.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, this would be like Microsoft going, well, let's bring back the Zune. Let's just bring that back. Who did this? What entry level nepotism based intern thought this was cool?
Yeah, people are nostalgic for 2002.
Yeah. Everybody thought that like the real peak of coolness was 1998 when it came to anything, online. To be honest, so yeah.
All right. Well, one thing I have to pride myself in is that I have created a non-grumpy old man podcast, so we're not going any further. We've done enough. We all know it's crap, so we set our piece on that. So let's go to happier things. And one of our happiest things right now is our Geek Gets, where we show off. It's a little geek show and tell of things that we've recently gotten. And I know, Steve, you said you got nothing because you're sequestered and have no life, and I'm very sorry about that. You should get out there and change that a little bit.
It's not exactly what I said, but it's pretty true.
Pretty close.
So.
That we're going. Right.
So we will be gracious to our guest. And Will, do you have something you want to show us that's a recent get?
Yeah, I do. Let's see if I can show it comfortably. Because it's unfortunately it's unwieldy, but fuck it. This is show and tell, and this is what I want to show.
I love it when a guy on the internet tells me that.
Starts reaching below his desk and going, it's really unwieldy, bud. Here you go. I'm going to pull it out for you.
That's for Comic Book Bears After Dark. This I've recently gotten as a huge print on my wall. I have not hung it yet. I got this so our comic book shop, adjacent to it, they own a vinyl art shop and also a game shop. They just own this entire strip of stores. It's amazing. I live in an amazing city, and I saw this print there, and I told my my fiance Scott that I really want this, and so he got it for me for Christmas, but we have not had a chance to frame it until now. So it's gonna go on the wall. You notice I've got these purple walls, and it's got this. It's for anyone listening. It's a Maniac Mansion poster. I loved the game back in the way back in the day. The original computer game from LucasArts back in I don't know, when I was young. And so
playing on your Amiga.
Playing on my Amiga. So that's my geeky get, and it's again, it's unwieldy. But I was happy to whip it out for you guys.
We appreciate it. I loved Maniac Mansion and the sequel. Loved both of those. That's the old-fashioned find the word, action and click on it kind of situation. Hunt for the pixel. I love those adventure games.
Okay,
that was gorgeous, and those colors are outstanding.
Cannot wait to have it probably behind me or in front. It's going on this wall. It's going on this purple wall.
Awesome.
Okay, over to Caleb. Caleb, what have you got?
All right, I've got a few things real quick. And weirdly, most of them are DC centric. I've been really DC centric here lately. So, for those of you who have listened to the show a long time, you know that I get these for my nieces whenever they come out. But I got the new Teen Titans Go Superhero Girls crossover all ages manga. I'm going to read it first, like a good uncle, and make sure that because who knows what they might have slipped in there.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to check it out first. Thanks to Bill, I grabbed this week as well because he talked me into it, so I had to grab it. So those both came in. I am having to buy new clothes every once in a while because I need things that fit. So I found this really awesome Batman T-shirt.
I saw that at a certain store, and they didn't have my size.
Probably the same one I saw it at. Yeah,
I'm certain. Okay.
So DM me your size. I'll check it up at mine and see if they haven't sent it to you. If they do,
okay.
And then on the theme of Batman, the last two things are going to be the things I'm really proud of. They're going to be my main ones to show you guys. I'm really excited about these. One's going to make Bill. They both probably make Bill really happy. So we were talking about Batman earlier. Let's. Have we ever talked about who your favorite Batman artists are historically? Have we ever mentioned that?
I think we very early on, I think even pre-Steve, we had a Batman-centric episode. And I can say for myself, my favorite Batman artist is probably Marshall Rogers.
Okay.
But in my head, Bruce Wayne and Batman look like Neil Adams drew them.
Right. Okay. Fair. Yeah. So mine, Steve, do you have a favorite Batman artist?
Not really. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna leave that favorite artist thing for another time because one of my favorite eras of Batman was the early 90s Legends of the Dark Knight. And there are a couple artists who contributed to that just had some really interesting kind of twisted character models that that I still stick in my head 30 years later. But also Lee Bermejo was pretty fantastic on Damn. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back on that one.
Okay. Well,
because I don't read a lot of Batman, but
let's see. Neil Adams was up there, but I mean, I don't know if this is like an okay pick or not, just because there's a lot of recency bias. But I really loved like every panel that Greg Capullo did. Capullo is at least in the discussion for me. But again, recency bias, I guess.
That's fair. I love Big Poppy. He's great. So mine historically is Norm Brayfogle. I love Norm Brayfogle. The way he draws Batman just speaks all to me. So a friend of mine, a friend of ours, I should say, is a pretty well-known artist and does really great commissions. His name is Mr. Daniel White. If you can get something by him, do it. He posted a piece that he was working on that I had to have, and I got it. Also got it framed. This is Daniel White following Norm Brayfogle's famous cover that he did for Detective Comics. It is one of my favorite Batman covers. So when I saw that he did that, I had to have it. I'm going to get it framed better. This is just a cheapo frame I had laid around the house. But I adore that thing. Daniel did an amazing job. Again, I cannot speak highly enough of his talent and skill. I own several pieces. And not only is he an amazing artist, he is a gem of a human being, like just one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And then last, but certainly not least, my record collection groweth, and I grabbed this week. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band on vinyl, which is my probably my second favorite Beatles album of all time. So love it.
I've never heard of them. Are they new? Are they?
They've got a song or three.
Okay.
Okay. So
I'll look for them on the radio.
So this is a fairly newer pressing, and they did reinstall the gatefold.
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool because the gatefold was gone for years. I'm very happy to see that.
It's so pretty.
Do they also have the insert with the? That's
so
new.
there's a couple of inserts. It's got this one which has the breakdown of who all is on the cover. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there is also it's not the same as with the original, but there is a copy of the cutouts.
Yeah,
that you can
came with the original version. Something very
this
similar.
Is not perforated, which I think the original was perforated where you could pop them out and stuff like that. If I remember,
but it was like the perforations; those ended in like 1968.
Okay, gotcha. This
so
is just a
most people were not used to those.
Yeah, this is just a print. So it doesn't
Yeah.
have that. But yeah, no, it's got the full, and it's got the endless loop. So for those of people
Nice.
who love the Beatles and you know the album, it does have the endless loop. So no, man, I love it. I've listened to it over and over again. I don't know how it ended up in the
Any
basket at
other way?
Target, but it did.
Any other way?
So,
Any.
uh
It's my cover. Okay.
huh. But yeah, so those are my geek gets for the week. Several, and sorry I was long winded, but yeah, no, very happy making to have this and have all of this.
Okay, great. This is not a new geek get, but we had a discussion about Sergeant Pepper, and I'm not showing off. This isn't anything you can do. I can do better, but it is just showing you your future because you will eventually get to the box set,
Nice, yeah.
which is
Yep.
a 4 CD, 1 Blu-ray version of the album. And I was talking to Caleb about this earlier this week, and I'm 33 days younger than Sergeant Pepper's. So this is something that has literally been with me my entire life. And as a Gen Xer, that's getting rarer and rarer. You can say that you kind of feel like I'm predating everything now. Having
Well, and
that, but
the
this is
the
where you're headed.
the box set, I may have to get a box set or a collection or something at some point. That may be the only way I can get my hands on the Magical Mystery Tour, which is my favorite Beatles album.
Yeah.
And they don't, like, that one's not
Yeah.
repressed as far as I know.
Yeah, it's just on moratorium. It's
Yeah.
just between pressings. You'll eventually get there. There was a situation in the '70s because Let It Be was distributed by United Artists and not Capitol. That Let It Be was
Mhm.
actually technically out of print for 4 years, and just at the point where it was getting difficult to find, they repressed. So you'll be fine with that. They missed the 50th anniversary boat though with it, so maybe it'll be like 60, which is coming up real soon. Okay. For my other gets, most of these are behind me. Through the magic of online shopping, I did get a bunch of home videos. I did get Catwoman Hunted, the new DC animated movie. Catwoman is going to be pretty prominent in this episode, knowing about what we're talking about. Still on a Hanna-Barbera kick. So I did get the entire series of Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles from 1966 and Devlin from 1974. Devlin is really forgotten. Imagine the most milquetoast version of Evel Knievel possible, and that's what Devlin is. So
yes.
fun. And then going back to
I will jump this car.
Yeah, going back to superheroes, the Black Friday was a very disappointing time in terms of the season set sales, so I'm trying to catch up, and I did get the Blu-ray of Superman and Lois season 1 finally. So, and then behind me, it's all a bunch of toys. Speaking of Daniel White, he kind of factors into this a little bit. And just like Comixology, if you're in the circles that Caleb and I are, that we orbit outside of CBB, a huge complaint has been the non-shipping situation with DCBS recently. I finally got my box, and amazingly, figures that I ordered last year came. So I did get Mego Wave 13. And this is where Daniel White includes, because I think he said he's going to get this Robin. These are the nicest Remigos that they've come out with, and a Penguin and a Joker. Let me get Joker in the shot there. And these are really nice compared to some of the other 8-inch that have come out from this company.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like taken back, like that Robin, like, and that Joker, and that Penguin. Like I had the original like figures that they're sort of like modeled off of. I think I still do, like in a box somewhere with like the cape like ripped off because I played with my shit. But
okay, and then going back here, there's a non-toy here, but we mentioned the Batman figures that are coming out in connection with the movie, so I was able to find a Selena Kyle. So a little more Catwoman here.
Doesn't say Catwoman, but it is Selena Kyle.
Yeah, I made it to a concert this Saturday after our last live stream. So I did see Anais Mitchell and Bonnie Light Horseman. Anais Mitchell is the writer of the Hadestown music from that musical, but she's also a prominent alternative folk artist. And Bonnie Light Horseman is effectively a kind of super group with members of the touring members of the National and the Shins, and so there's people in that route, which were part of a group which has since disbanded called 37D 03D. I haven't Googled what that meant, but it's Bonnie Light Horseman is traditional folk and country songs done in um, a very heartfelt style. Let me put it that way. And I got the vinyl at the show, which was nice. And then lastly, a couple of pops here. I got through the Disney Movie Insiders program that Steve and I are part of. I did have enough points for Gilgamesh from the Eternals, so
good get.
Got that one. They had offered Icarus, and I passed. And then also, thanks to my other half, he knocked one out of the park for Valentine's Day, and I got the Valentine version of The Mandalorian.
Aww.
So them's
so
my
cute.
gets. That's my gets there.
Good gets. Good gets.
Which was nice because like the last 2 weeks haven't been really too impressive. Because it's the first, it's just like, as Will knows, January is a dumping point for movies, and people just don't go out as much in that month. And I think some of that, beyond Omicron, was you're just not shopping as much. So, All right. So we're going to move on to actually talking about comic books. Yes, that's the name of the show, and we do dedicate time to that. So, Steve, you are always our lucky charm in terms of going first on the round table. So why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
Frosted Lucky Charms. I don't know. Now I've got that song stuck in my head. I've got the little jingle just going in the back of my head the entire time. So, well, that's me. So one of the things that's been really hyped over the past year, in preparation for one of Image's big initiatives in sort of creating another, similar to when they first, started, another sort of shared superhero universe. And it's something that they used to have. They sometimes do, Invincible and the Eric Larson characters and the Liefeld characters sometimes would interact and things like that, but hasn't really been promoted as much recently. Well, they started a brand new superhero universe called the Massiveverse, I believe. And the first comic series that was part of that is Radiant Black, which I have been reading, and I've been enjoying it. It's a very interesting, kind of a different superhero title, with a lot more angst than superheroing. But it's fun, it's colorful, it's got a great biting sense of humor, and a lot of fun sort of video store nostalgia because of the main character, who is the Radiant Black, or second Radiant Black technically. But there are several other characters that are going to be introduced or have been introduced already. And so, in February of 2022, they released Super Massive. This one-shot, right now, I'm sure it's going to be kind of, something that they'll come back to. This was just released, and this actually right here is the variant cover. That kind of gives you an idea of who's in this. So you have Radiant Black over here. You have Rogue Sun, who again just started this month with the number 1, and this is Inferno Girl Red, who has not been introduced prior to this issue. But will be having an OGN graphic novel coming out later this fall that'll highlight her adventures. And the premise of Supermassive is that there's some extra-dimensional incursion into the Radiant Black universe. Inferno Girl Red, right over here, chases what looks like a weird chimera hybrid creature through a portal into the woods and tries to defeat it. Well, this alerts Rogue Sun, who's also kind of a big superhero, who is extremely powerful, a family man, kind of a loner otherwise, though. He gets alerted to this incursion, and he flies up into northern Canada to go and fight it. and at the same time, Radiant Black is pulled away from wherever he is to also encounter this threat. And so the three of them meet up, and of course they fight right away, because that's exactly what superheroes always do when they're being introduced in a crossover, until they join forces and go after this creature. And one of Radiant Black's sort of villain characters that are hinted at, there's a pair of these knuckleheads who have discovered a way to harness some of this sort of black hole energy, and have been sort of creating other powered villains or other powered people that can absorb the black hole energy that Radiant Black, Radiant Red, Radiant Yellow, etc. Produce. And unfortunately, the Chimera takes over one of those knuckleheads, and unfortunately starts absorbing the powers of Rogue Sun and Radiant Black and Inferno Girl Red. So they're left powerless and have to sort of drive across the country trying to chase this massive, monstrous creature that absorbs power. Lots of really great action, lots of really great colors in this. It's an extremely colorful book, but also has the prerequisite beautiful central splash page. And I'm not spoiling much, just showing it because it is absolutely gorgeous. But it it just really highlights it. Does the full Power Ranger, lots of lines, lots of colors, lots of explosions. Just beautiful. And I do have to say, all of the creators actually all work together on this book. So you have, let's see, you've got Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott and Matt Groom, who are the three main writers for Rogue Sun and Radiant Black. But you also have multiple artists that are involved in this, including Radiant Black artists, as well as the artists for Rogue Sun, and a couple other characters. So you've got Francesco Mana, Melania Palladino, Simona Ragazzoni, Marcelo Costa, Abel, and Erica Durso. There's a lot of names involved in this. It's definitely a great undertaking, but it's very cohesive as a special thing here. So looks like Caleb has an image here that we can try and share. Is that good? Awesome.
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna.
There we go.
So Bill, I was going to show you this. The art in this has got a very the way that they're drawing her, especially, has got a very Gotcha Man vibe that I thought you would enjoy. So I found this and I wanted to pull it up and show it to you. You're muted.
Yeah, it's.
I was saying kind of like a stylized Gatchaman, like some of
Mm-hmm.
the '90s OA and OVA, and not the original stuff, but very definitely much a Gatchaman color scheme there.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of, it's part and parcel, I think, with what they've been stylistically, what they're really been showing with Radiant Black. There's a lot of manga inspiration, a lot of oh gosh, Will, help me out here. What's the company that puts out all of those Power Ranger type shows?
Saban?
Tokusatsu? Is it Tokusatsu? Yeah. That kind of style of action, because of course with Radiant Black you also have Radiant Red and Radiant Yellow, and they all kind of have like color coordinated different powers and abilities, and all look like they're dudes in suits that are just about to fight gummies or wobblies or rock monsters or whatever. But it's a lot of fun. It's a really fun series. Radiant Black has been. Rogue Sun again has a little bit of a different feel to it. I'm sure that Inferno Girl Red, when that's released later this year, also will have a very interesting feel, because she's in an alternate universe that has the ability now to cross over into this one. But also a little bit of surprise cameo at the end from yet another character that's going to be part of this, and that is the character of Dead Lucky by Melissa Flores, French Carlo Magno, and Mattia Iacono. Makes just like a quick, tiny appearance. We haven't seen this character before, but obviously he's going to be part of this massive universe going forward. So I'm just, I'm just really excited that they were able to bring it out, and that it actually was really good. So I definitely want to recommend this. Supermassive. from Image Comics. And if you haven't checked it out already, check out Radiant Black and get some backstory on these characters. So.
Yeah, I have to say, first of all, I was scared away by the price point. And for me, this is the ideal kind of book to budget price at $1.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's $5.99 if you pay full price.
When I do think of world building, I thought one of the most interesting and beneficial uses of the budget first issue was Project Superpowers. And one other question I have is, so this is just Higgins right now, his past creator-owned superhero stuff like Cowl.
Yes.
That doesn't factor into this at all?
It does.
Cowl
it does actually factor.
Okay.
Cowl does in Radiant Black. However, it is an in-universe fictional series that has been made into comic books, cartoons, and a series of live-action films.
Okay.
And if you read Radiant Black, there are several issues where they kind of comment on it. Just here and there about, Cowl. In fact, the main character, Radiant Black, is like, "Hey, whoa, your costume's really cool. It's like Sonic from Cowl." Like, it's really funny. So if you have read Cowl, yes, there's a lot of references there, but it's as a fictional, a much more popular fictional property.
There's a very clever way of incorporating that. I like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I was just scared away by the price point.
Yeah, I mean, $6 ain't cheap, but if you can find it cheaper,
Especially
awesome. If you get a discount,
that you don't have anything to grasp onto, and I haven't touched Radiant Black, so
I'm.
Is it an accessible enough entry point? Like let's say I've not touched Radiant Black at all, but I just picked up Supermassive. Would I feel lost, or?
I don't necessarily think so. I think that because Radiant Black is still getting going, it's only had 12 issues up to this point. So there's been a lot of backstory, a lot of development going on in Radiant Black, but mostly about the main character outside of superheroing. So what this is doing is it's just introducing sort of the characters at their most superhero-y in order to sort of team up and fight this creature. And Rogue Sun, I mean, again, just came out with the first issue, so there's really not a lot of people who have a lot of backstory on that one. So I think you're given a really good introduction for him. You're introduced to Infernal Girl Red because she's never been seen before, and I think it really does do a pretty good job of just introducing somebody completely new to the whole concept. I think you would get a lot more if you have been reading Radiant Black, but. You know what? If you're just coming into new, you haven't checked out any of the series, this will kind of give you a good taste of what it's like.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's go over to our guest, Will. Why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
Absolutely. So I recently went to the comic book shop, and I've sort of been away from like the horror side of the shelves recently, which is a shame because I love horror films. I love horror comics, right? And as part of this, also, it's useful to know that in my my day gig, I work in the veterinary industry. So there was a book that jumped right off the shelf at me, and it was the trade for Stray Dogs, which is, as the book describes it on the front, what you get when you crossbreed Silence of the Lambs with All Dogs Go to Heaven. The idea behind Stray Dogs is this is a story about these dogs. They can talk, but only to one another. Done in this beautiful animated style that almost feels reminiscent of something like Don Bluth-ish. But the characters, they all, and you have to be careful because spoilers, of course, but they all start to realize that this master that they all live in the same house of might have a secret, kind of like a pretty scary and pretty dark secret. And what I love so much about this is a dark book. This is a very dark book that goes to some really dark places, while at the same time always maintaining this very vibrant, buoyant artistic style. And most importantly, it plays with this narrative element that I think makes all of it work. And that's dogs historically don't have great long-term memory, right? You know, they don't maintain all of the different memories that we do the same way. So this book weaves in and out of these dogs forgetting and remembering and forgetting and remembering things, and that's where the real mystery comes from, as well as where the real horror comes from as well. Right now, you can find on the shelves the trade paperback, which collects issues 1 through 5, which was the original run. It's a complete story. You read this forward to back, from the front panel to the end panel. It tells a complete story, done, finito. But now out on the shelves as well, there is a side series called Dog Days. And there are 2 issues of it out right now. And this features, there's a lot of supporting characters in this who you realize share a similar fate to the main characters, but you don't really get to explore their backstory in full detail. And the Dog Day series plays like a series of vignettes, each one focusing on a different aspect of that dog or that story. And they help to, I guess, flesh out the main story itself while not necessarily moving it into too many different territories themselves. I really love this. I think it's, for a horror fan, it's really refreshing. I think there are a lot of horror books that play it grotesque, play it dark, play it grim. And yes, there's some darkness to this, but it never feels grim in the way that it's presented, even though there's, again, some pretty messed up things happening. Again, part of that is the art style. Part of it is the fact that it's talking dogs. Part of it is the fact that these dogs are constantly like kind of re-remembering and re-relating to one another. And so you get these like moments of jubilance, which pop up even when they're dealing with some pretty intense things altogether. So it's a very different read, unlike almost anything that I've read recently. I was enraptured from panel 1 to panel the last. And if you like those things that I just described, I would strongly recommend it. And of course, this is from the artist and writer Tony Fleeks, and he worked with Trish Forstner, I think, who did a lot of the cover art with him and assisted with a lot of the artwork. But
well,
I mean,
Trish did all the art in the book.
Trish did all of the art.
Yeah, she did all of it. She's the main artist on the book. Yep.
Well, okay, perfect. That's helpful. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, they worked on My Little Pony before this, and you can see those artistic styles work here so well. So yeah, that's my recommend. This was, again, for someone who really likes, you know, I come from the movie verse, right? This feels very cinematic. I could see an animated movie made out of this. I could see like a probably too bloated, but like Netflix original series built off of this.
Well, rumor has it that somebody has bought the option to it. So
yeah,
I would watch it.
So Bill and I, those kind of concentric circles he was talking about earlier, Tony is in those. So we have the benefit of knowing Tony fairly well. Great guy. Can't wait to see him in June when we meet up at Heroes. Going to hug that man's neck real hard. No, he's fantastic. The series is fantastic. I co-sign on that with you. One of the things I love that this book does for a reader like me, and I think for all of us, and something that we're seeing more and more in comics, this book weaponizes nostalgia, because exactly what you said, it reminds you of All Dogs Go to Heaven, and it reminds you of Silence of the Lambs, both of which, for folks who I think are in the vicinity of our ages, are very nostalgic movies for us, very nostalgic moments, and it weaponizes that to the benefit of the story. Nostalgia is a concept that plays heavy in comics across the board. This one does it the right way, and it is a story that will make you cry, it will break your heart, it will make you smile. It also does something really cool, in that Tony and Trish sent out a thing and said, hey, send me pictures of your puppies. In the back of it, you have just screenshots of puppies and stuff. A lot of those are my friends' dogs. So you get to see a lot of the people that Bill and I are really good friends with. Their puppies are all over that book. So it's kind of a family book for us as far as a core group. So I love it so much.
Yeah. When you do mention the animated aspect and the the comparison to Don Bluth Studios, to me that's some of the more horrific elements to it,
right?
Particularly with the aspect of memory. When you do have some of these dogs, when they do see pictures and actually start to remember, that to me, though there is some, I don't want to say traditional horror elements toward the end, but to me that's some of the most terrifying bits because it's played against such a such a cartoony backdrop or front drop, maybe I guess you could say. Yeah, no, I co-sign on everything that you guys have said. I have one of the thousands of variations of the trade this from the Rainbow Cards and Comics that our good friend John Runyon provided for both myself and Steve. And again, with the back material, you have a lot of the variant covers. I definitely do have the Pet Cemetery issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's one of those things like you say. I can't wait to see how this will be adapted, but I also know
Yeah.
I'm going to be crying my eyes out.
Yeah.
And some of the biggest tests. If you want a book of testimony to the adage that we don't deserve dogs, this is it.
Bill,
100%. Yes.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you know if this was the first? So, as far as I know, this is the first book that Tony's written. Is that true? I've
No, I
always
think
known him as an artist.
I believe there's at least one or two projects that he was the writer and artist on
Okay.
prior to this. Um, I believe this is and maybe it's actually in the bio. Um, I do think the Champion of Earth, Jeff Steinberg,
Mm-hmm.
Champion of Earth, I think he
Gotcha.
did both duty on that. Yeah, I may be wrong, and I don't want to put hands of Bible on that. But and we're actually going to be talking about artists who function remarkably well as writers in
Right.
another book that we're talking about tonight. Um, and I can't wait to see where he goes as a writer from here.
Oh, me and you both.
Yeah.
And Will, if you want a really good fun time, read his My Little Pony Transformers crossover.
Oh my God, I'm in.
Oh my God,
I'm in.
His
Yeah.
eye just blew it up.
Yeah,
there.
no, I
Amazing.
love shit like that because what it does so well for me is like I love when someone can effectively cross over two things that have no right crossing over, but is able to do it in a way like that is
Yeah.
that is my jam. So yeah, if you're advocating for a Transformers My Little Pony crossover, I'm here.
Okay, and then with the Stray Dogs Dog Days 2-issue miniseries, there's sadness in that this is it. He's said that there's really no other stories to tell with
Yeah.
I mean, and I wouldn't want to see like stray dogs
No.
in space or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Hey, speak for yourself.
No, it's.
now that I said that, all right.
I mean, I would watch that, but no, the story
Yeah.
ends exactly where it needs to end. The supplementary material in Dog Days supplements the most terrifying thing that I've seen. I've watched a lot of movies, but easily in the last year of any movie or any comic is one of the panels, and I can talk to you guys about it off so I don't spoil it. But there's one panel here that just absolutely just terrified me on a visceral level at my core, and that's effective. That's comic books, folks.
Yeah. All right, let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about something you're reading that you're digging.
Well, if we're gonna stick to the theme of books that might break your heart, but I'm gonna go for, yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready for this, man.
This book is gonna be hard because like I'm already kind of in my feelings, and we're gonna bounce over to DC with this book. If you're like me, a lot of and I think a lot of you are big fan of Tom King, big fan of like most of these little mini series. He's become kind of the guy to go to for maxi series, 12 issues. A lot of times he takes these C-level characters and just works with them. He was the longtime writer. He did 105 issues of Batman. Some things happened with that, and he ended up not getting to finish the story he wanted to tell. So they went to him and said, hey, you've created this Batman Catwoman relationship and world. Finish it in a 12-issue series. Do what you want with it. That's kind of the format and the style that you're known for and you love. Do it that way. So he did. And he's got this Batman Catwoman series going on right now, which really is more Catwoman than Batman. And it's phenomenal. I love it. It's had some pacing issues as far as when the books come out, but that's neither here nor there. But because Tom King is sneaky, as he is wont to be. He's a former CIA agent, so he's going to be sneaky. He managed to get an extra book thrown in there, and he gave us, with the help of some really great people, and somebody who's no longer with us. He gave us Batman, Catwoman, the Winter Special. when this book was put together and it was first written, the entire thing was supposed to be done by John Paul Leon. John Paul Leon unfortunately passed away to cancer last year. This was his second bout with cancer. He had beat it. It went into remission. And unfortunately, it came back, and he didn't tell anybody about it. And so it was kind of a surprise to most of the people that were near and dear to his heart. And I just know him as a fan. I'm getting choked up about this. I just know him as a fan. That's the, his stuff. But if you know John Paul Leon, you know him from Milestone, and the Static Shock series especially was part and parcel of him. That book is near and dear to my heart, and that's where I first found him and fell in love with him and his style. And so just as a fan, just as somebody who loves this medium and loves these artists, that punched me in the chest. And so I was not expecting this, but as far as I know, this was his last published work that we're ever going to get. This is it. And that is a bittersweet thing, because he works so well in this book, and it's so gorgeous, and I'm glad to have it. So what is this book, you might be asking? Batman Catwoman Winter Special really takes you through the entire life cycle of Selina Kyle. It starts at her birth, when she is, and this is not a slave to canon by any means. It goes off and does some really cool things in and of itself. But for this book, for the four corners of this book, Selina Kyle was, put in a dumpster by her parents, didn't know who they were. She was raised in an orphanage, obviously, that was owned and propagated by Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne, because they were philanthropists, and that's kind of where she grew up in. And she literally grew up in the shadow of this giant portrait of the Wayne family, and it was kind of the last thing that they were ever in before Thomas and Martha were killed. But the book starts off and it focuses on this really solemn face of a young Bruce Wayne that she kind of lives with. And of course, this orphanage, this children's home, is ran by the angry old nuns who will knock your knuckles with rulers and stuff. And Selina Kyle she was who she was since birth. She runs away, she befriends these cats, and she actually, the story kind of walks you through it from a young girl. She finds these cats, and her skills develop because she's just following these cats around. And in order to go where the cats go, she has to become an amazing acrobat. She has to become swift and silent. And that leads her into a life of crime because, she's in Crime Alley. She's a child of the gutter. She has no money. She's pulling herself up the only way that she knows how, which is the street economy. And she does that. And in doing so, she meets some really questionable people. And she starts fencing, and she finds herself on the wrong side of this emergent superhero who is, we all know, Batman, Bruce Wayne. She is, she's sidelined with individuals like the Joker, like Penguin. And as the book unfolds, you start to realize that she's kind of on the fence, and she's playing both sides of this. And then, pertinent to the story, she falls in love with Bruce. She falls in love with Batman, and you see the seeds of that relationship and how it develops, and how she is, she's of two worlds. She looks at Bruce very on in the relationship, and she says, we keep doing this month after month. We get together, and of course the book says, we kiss, but it implies that they are knocking boots and they're doing other things. But we do this, and then you arrest me and you send me away, and you don't even think about me for another month until we repeat this cycle all over again. And Bruce is like, no, that's actually not the case. And then they link up and they get married, or they start living their life together. And again, Bruce and Batman is trying to pull her to the side of the angels, and she's not there yet. She's still who she is, and she needs this space to be herself and to commit crime and to steal things, because stealing, thievery is almost as much of a compulsion to her, you see in this book, as fighting crime is for Bruce. And actually, there's a moment later on in the book where he buys this diamond through a shell company, this world-renowned thing, and has it shipped to a museum. And he tells her, it's like, hey, look, it's there if you want it. Technically, it's not stealing because we already own it. And she just looks at him. She's like, you don't know me at all after all these years. It's a heart-wrenching moment, because you realize just how compelled she is, how much this is not a choice for her. It's just something kind of who she is, when she does it. So their relationship develops, and they get married, and all of a sudden Selena is with child, and it's Helena, and she gives birth to this wonderful little girl that changes their lives. And she tries to give her the childhood that she never has, and all the while dealing with the fact that her and Bruce are super figures. I'm not going to use the word heroes. I mean, obviously Batman is, but she's fighting crime too at this point, but they're taking turns. They're co-parenting. So, while she's out dealing with crime on one Christmas, Bruce has got her on speakerphone, and they're talking through, and she's getting her, this present that's going to last the entire life, that is very specific to who Catwoman is, who Selena is. The next Christmas, they're switching, they're going off, and she's at home with this long box, and she's like, this is very important that your dad has this. He's listening, as he's out there, beating up Tweedledee and Tweedledum. But he didn't even tell me what this is. And she opens it up, and it's this weapon. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but and of course she's just like, she's an 11-year-old. You can't give her that. And he's like, look, we'll deal with it. And Bruce being Bruce, he starts training a young Helena who will grow up to become, the Huntress, but a version of Batgirl that we see in this story. Damian Wayne exists in this universe, but he doesn't play a role. But they make a reference because Selena feels some kind of way about it. She's like, you're training my daughter to do this. We wanted her to stay out of this. And he was like, well, look, like Damian at the age of 12 was doing this. And she's like, yeah, but he was raised by assassins. This is not the model childhood. And then the book goes into their later years, how they grow old together, and how they both feel like they have been replaced by the new generation, and they both feel like they are fighting against the clock, and their bodies are failing them, and they're becoming, or at least they feel that way. They don't know what to do. And then you see the snippet of where Tom King's ongoing series plays into this, and the role that the Joker plays into that, and how the Huntress comes to be. It is an amazingly paced, wonderfully developed timeline of Selena Kyle's life and her relationships and her multiple personas as they fit into one, as she is a woman and a mother and a wife and an artist, and a con artist and a superhero and a thief, and how she doesn't fit like a cat. She doesn't fit into the box, although she likes to play with the box because that's what cats do. John Paul Leon shines in the first, I think, 12 to 14 pages of this book. And it's stunning. And he did all the breakdowns. So the artists that follow, they got some really great artists. Bernard Chang and Sean Crystal jumped in after the 14th page to help fill out his what he left with the thumbnails. You have Mitch Gerards, who does some of the work in here. Dave Stewart does all the colors. Clayton Cowell does the letters, as he does with almost every Tom King thing. And it just delivers. I've got some images. Let me see if I can share them. To maybe they'll pull up. Maybe not, because I don't have them up here right now. Hang on just a second. Let me talk through this. As I'm doing this, before I pull these up, Bill, I know you read this too, and the back matter struck you as much as it did me.
God, yeah. God, yeah. But if I can just comment some bits in the story, King is obviously in love with Selena.
Yes.
He's in love with her. And her self-descriptions are the most Selena Kyle line ever is in this book. I'm not, I know, I already know it already by heart. I'm not always nice, but I'm always nice to cats.
Right.
And also, it was just so much, there's a playfulness to this, which I think goes along the lines with a cat, that there is, the terrain that this covers is the life and death of a romance due to age, which is central to the middle part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do a count, but at least when the cat and the bat get together, I'm wondering if you do get every Christmas that they spend here in there, and just wonderful moments all through that. You had mentioned the part, well, Damien was raised by assassins, and Bruce's first line to her, yeah, well, she was raised by you. So, there are wonderful moments like that. The two of them deciding to spend Christmas on an island, and they're bored to tears
Yeah.
because of the kind of people that they are. When they do have life without Bruce, a heartbreaking ending, which is a cycle to the beginning, which thank God for Black Label, I hope is not canon. So, but just wonderful moments. The reveal of Helena's middle name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that broke my heart. The
Oh, yeah.
you
Like
know,
just
and
that little moment.
yeah, and plus with this book, if you are reading the Batman Catwoman series, there's a lot of Helena Fillon here. There's a lot of stuff that fleshes out things, and beyond that, the references to Nth Metal, and those
Mm-hmm.
little subtle ties to the rest of the DC universe. One thing I absolutely loved, and I found out. Let me just talk a little bit about the Paul Leon panel that I went to at New York Comic Con, which involved Bernard Chang, who is a friend of his from high school.
Yep.
Um,
And who brought him into Milestone?
yeah,
Legend has it.
with Michael Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about two guys that were getting work in high school. I do think that Leon's first work was RoboCop for Dark Horse Presents, one of those 8-page stories, and I don't think he had graduated high school by that point. Um, I'm getting goosebumps about talking about some of this material.
It's hard not to do.
One thing that was wonderful about the way that Leon approached books is he always drew the cover first.
Mm-hmm.
And because often that's and look at this.
Are y'all able to
Often,
see my screen just by
yep,
chance?
yep.
Okay.
Often that's the most labor intensive piece of an artist drawing for an issue, and that's different. And there were so many things that set him apart from other artists. And like you said, the back material in here, beyond reprints of anthology stories, and I think some of that he's not as well known outside of the comics world is because he wasn't the biggest self promoter. um there are far more inferior artists, let's put it that way, and
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's a fair way of saying that a layman will have some familiarity with the name and the style. But you have there the black and white images from Selena very early on, sneaking into Wayne Manor. um oh god, the back material, you have pinups that are John Paul Leon inspired, that are wonderful. John Bogdanavoni has this amazing story about when Walt Simonson was John Paul's teacher at SVA, and John Bogdanovi, I'm trying to get the pronunciation right, at the time was a Superman artist, and those guys were making money hand over fist
Mm-hmm.
with the death and return of Superman. And he comes in and he's blown away, and just uh, the text that he provided there, I can't walk through New York City and not see it through the eyes that John Paul drew it. He seems to have made such a huge impact on the people that followed him, and that knew him. And I, it's a tough book to get through.
Yeah.
The farther and farther you get into it, because it's a eulogy, and
Yeah.
it's a last testament. And definitely recommend people getting this book. And also, if you've never sampled his art before, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. It's a wonderful introduction.
It is.
Um,
And it
and
gives you the breakdowns.
yeah,
That's another thing. And as somebody who, someday I want to be somebody who writes comics once, with all that free time I'm going to have as a lawyer. But this book gives you his breakdowns. And if you need you could do worse than having a model of John Paul Leon to teach you how to do sequential storytelling.
yeah.
I love stuff like this because it's a free lesson. It is free
Mhm.
education on how to write comics. because you should know how breakdowns happen. You should know pacing. You should know story structure. You should know how these things, how these images are going to work for the reader, and how to leave space for things like words.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. And as David reminds me, he's like, "Hey, you can do both." But if I had a favorite of the back matter, mine was the one by Clayman and Seth Man, and they give this really wonderful pinup. I'm sorry for the glare, but of the bat and the cat and they're hugging. But the quote is an actual John Paul Leon quote, and it was essentially somebody basically asked him what he wanted his legacy to be, and he said, I want to build a body of work and be highly regarded amongst my peers." And they put that quote in there, and they just said, "Well done, John Paul. Well done." Like, and that's how much more do you need? That's it. If that was your goal in life, you achieved that, in beyond measure.
Yeah. And one thing we do have to look forward to is that they are reissuing the Wintermen, which is one of the very few creator-owned projects that he worked on that's coming up. But that panel was wonderful. I wish it was archived somewhere. And just in terms of being a bear, his brother, oh, just to lighten the mood up here a little bit. Oh my God,
Nice.
just one of those straight guys just has no idea how handsome he is. No idea.
Also,
I just can't get a date.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well.
I don't
Maybe you
know
could.
about you, but I didn't know I needed old Riddler in my life for one, robbing a bank in a hospital gown, but I did. I needed that badly.
Oh, yeah. So
But yeah,
wonderful stuff.
yeah. Pick this up, even if you're not reading the main story. Pick this up. You don't have to be reading Batcat for this to work for you at all. It's a
No.
standalone story. It stands on its own. Already on a short list for being one of my favorite single issues of this year, because y'all know I love my lists.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, my book, we're staying with Catwoman. And the book I want to talk about is Catwoman Lonely City #2. You got both covers?
No, this is 1 and 2.
Oh, 1 and 2. All right, I've already talked about 1, but we can talk about it a little
They're
bit
so
more.
pretty. Those
They're so
covers are
pretty.
so pretty.
And again, this is Cliff Chang doing everything. Writing, drawing, lettering, colors, everything.
Doing it all and doing the most.
Yeah. And where are we at with Catwoman in the story? 10 years ago, there was a massacre known as Fool's Night because God knows Gotham has to have these events. And even that I thought was almost like a nod and, a wink to the way that the Batman editorial works out. And on Fool's Night, the Batman, Joker, Commissioner Gordon, and Nightwing all met their deaths. And Batman's death was blamed in part on Catwoman. So she's been in prison for 10 years. So we flash forward to the present day, and Gotham is a very different Gotham. It's very antiseptic. They've put away the costume heroes and the costume villains. It's much cleaner, it's much safer, and it's a lot less free. And the current mayor is Harvey Dent. And he kind of rules with an iron fist with his Bat Cops. All right, this is sounding all very comic booky, cartoony, but the treatment in this story is anything but. So the not to spoil anything, but Selina has spent 10 years haunted by Bruce's last words. And she knows that the way that she can right the wrongs in Gotham is by breaking into the Batcave, which is effectively her greatest score. This is something that uh, totally appeals to her. So she's resolved to do that. But to do that, she needs a crew. And the crew that she assembles is Killer Croc. And believe me, after you read this, you want a Cliff Chang written Killer Croc series because
100%.
it is some funny shit. You get the Riddler, you get the Riddler's daughter, who has not appeared since Judd Winnick was on Batman. And even then, it was kind of assumed and not outwardly stated. You have a very different version of Poison Ivy. So she's, effectively bringing the band together. And we are headed towards Election Day. And there's this momentum that's building in regards to Harvey losing it. His main opponent is Councilwoman Barbara Gordon. And the more and more that I'm saying this, the more comic booky it's sounding, almost like a Batman 66 episode. But that I think is testimony to how good he is as a writer. That's the thing that's really blowing my mind. Yes, it's absolutely beautiful to look at. Even just the simple act of people wearing a cat mask. It's absolutely beautifully executed. But his writing, my God, I really hope that he is on a monthly title after this because monthly titles deserve him. He's very, very good as a writer. Um, and this is a book that has immediately gone to the top of my stack. Um, but to also go back to the art, I mean, he's so good at the art. So much of the storytelling here relies on body positioning, and it's hard to describe until you get into it. But he's such an adept artist that he knows that that's a strength of his. And also, if you read this and you read the Riddler as Jim Carrey's Riddler, it totally works. Totally works. And I never thought I would be saying that about any comic. Um, it's the best description I've read about this was that Catwoman Lonely City is flirty, like Catwoman. It's a very flirty book, and I think that's a very apt description. I can't speak highly enough. I'm not exactly sure how long the series is scheduled for. I could see it wrapping up in 3, but I'm going to be sad when this goes away. This has really gone directly to the top of my stack.
So it sounds like we've had a couple where we're talking about artists really making a go of it as writers. Tony Fleeks, who also is an artist, Cliff Chang. I mean, it is fun when you see that. And I think we mentioned Chip Zdarsky. He's also a great artist who also happens to be a great writer, too. So, interesting. There's some crossover there. Get those skills out. If you can draw, you might be able to write.
I just love how. Oh, go ahead, Will. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say there's this wonderfully delightful page in. I don't know if it's 1 or 2. I'm thinking of the whole thing as one story at this point right now. But there's just this one delightful page that I think highlights all of the writing talents as well as the artistic talents all coming to a head, and it's a very mundane page in the grand scheme of things, but at this point, Killer Croc and Selena Kyle are living in this loft together, and they're prepping for the big score. And so it's just a page that's sort of a montage of like this life that they're living of like, okay, I'm working out today, and now the two of them are just like chilling on the couch together, just all of those different things. And it's just a simple little page, but it tells a lot in a nice, clean montage. I love the way that Croc is drawn and written here. I love the way that Selena is written and drawn here. They're both aged characters, so they're both dealing with, her knees are not as good as they used to be. His he's got some hips issues that are affecting his strength overall, and so I just loved seeing all of that play out. And there's a lot of pages like that tell these little micro moments, but I love that particular page.
And oh my, just one bit I forgot until you were talking about Selena talking to Barbara Gordon about her regrets.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
Well, and I think that speaks to the all of this speaks to the balance that Chang is giving us here, because like you said, as you describe it, it sounds like it's super comic booky, but the book doesn't. And I love super comic booky books. That's not a knock on it, but the book is so well balanced that it really does a really good job of finding the center point between the comical and the serious moments, and it shifts back and forth between them so incredibly well. As I was reading this, I found myself thinking, there's no way that Cliff Chang is not, like he has studied Darwin Cook's version of Catwoman, because there's an element of Darwin Cook's Catwoman here that he just takes and he does his own thing with. And at the same time, I couldn't help but kind of juxtapose what's going on with the story with Dent and his bat troops and everything else with the weirdness that we just got with the future state stuff in Batman and Detective, where they also have these like shock troopers who run around. And this was so much better. Like this,
Yes.
it was the same. It was the same kind of concept.
Yeah.
Like it's the same kind of concept. Both of these people are making this statement on the police state, right? Like that's what they're talking about. Like there are larger elements at play that do with our contemporary culture that they're playing with. But this is just delivered in a way that I think is more digestible, and not in the sense that it's easier to read or it's like it's sanitized, because it's not. But it's just easier to read. It brings it to a point. You realize how serious this is. You realize the metaphor that they're using and the bridge to the gap of reality. But it just is more. It brings a levity to it. Just after that, you're like, okay, like I needed this to get me through because frankly, the real world sucks, and I didn't need that to be bashed with it constantly. It's great.
Yeah, the other thing I should have mentioned is his take on Gotham. I think is letter perfect. In the element that we are 10 years into the future, and still Batman and Joker are ever present, and in some ways in very sneaky ways. As a writer, that he puts that in there. Subversive, that's the word I wanted to find. I just can't speak highly of this enough. I'm gonna miss this like hell, and I just hope that give him Catwoman. Give him the ongoing, please. Just write it.
I would 100%. Like I don't, I'm not reading a lot of like monthlies right now, just because there's so many, and I'm picking up trades. I would 100% read a monthly. I would pick that up and read it and not stop. But I'm that into what we've seen with Lonely City so far that would be at the top of my pull list.
Yeah.
Also, Will, I don't know if you do this in your head, given the type of podcast you're usually on, but there's always an element of me of casting people in this, and all I can see with older Selena is Carrie Ann Moss right now.
Yes.
All I can see.
Yes. I as someone who was on the way more positive side than a lot of people on the most recent Matrix movie, I saw that as well. And there's even moments where she's doing things like doing the thing where you're like kind of spread armed and legged across like a ceiling as someone's walking underneath you. I literally pictured, thank you for saying that, I pictured Trinity doing that. That's amazing.
Cool.
That.
Yeah, and that came with to me. There's a moment where Edward is leaning, and that's where I got the Jim Carrey, and then from there it's the Jim Carrey that I'm reading. Riddler. So
it's not just drawing characters, and there's a lot of artists that do this, but it's not just drawing characters, but it's drawing these like moments and these characterizations that draw from something that feel very real and very lived in, even though it's a very comic booky story in a comic booky style. So there's something very magical about someone who can thread that exact needle.
Okay, cool. Well, we each picked another book. We are up against the clock, but I think we should still at least talk a little bit about the second books that we chose. So, Steve, we'll start with you. What's the second book that you were reading that you are digging?
Well, so a quick thing. Manor Black is back. The new series Fire in the Blood, the second volume, just started this month, and I'm so excited for this. I think that the gap between the first series and this one... I mean, Caleb, I know you follow this one. Has it been 3 years?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. I read this about 2 weeks ago, so I don't remember the exact number, but time has definitely passed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been such a long time. I was kind of worried that it wasn't going to be coming back, because everybody loves Cullen Bunn, and Cullen's buns, I'm sure, are also very nice. But Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurt on the writing duties here. All right, just had to throw that in. I mean, I just love the first series so much, and I was really sad that we hadn't really seen or heard anything of it for such a long time. So I was extremely pleased to see that it was coming back. Very, very quickly, quick summary from the first season, first series, is that this one character, Ari, is finding that she's been somehow blessed or cursed with this power of fire. And there's an old family in her town, the Black family of Manor Black, that also turn out to be blood mages, who have had a long-standing feud with those magic users that could control fire, and while they control blood and other things. So the patriarch of the Black family takes Ari under his wing to the protestations as well as the foiled machinations of some of his children. So that kind of set it up. It got all set up in the first series. In this one, Ari is training, trying to be able to use this fire magic that's inherent inside of her, and unfortunately, the Roman Black, who's the patriarch of the family, is a little bit frustrated with what's going on in training her. So, interestingly enough, in this series, as much as we're getting Ari's story and seeing sort of her, her training, her kind of understanding of what happened in the Black family and how she's connected somehow to it, we also get the flashbacks with Roman. Him coming back from the war. Whether it was World War II or the Korean War, not really clear necessarily, but his flashbacks kind of show that there's been some power struggles in this family before, and we're starting to see that story too, to kind of see exactly what's happened and why it's such a treacherous tightrope that he walks in bringing Ari in to to his family to try and help her control her power and in a way kind of bolster his own power, as well as what his family struggled with in the past that he might succumb to as well, a type of madness that leads him to destroy the rest of his family. So really cool setup, really great art from Tyler Crook. I mean, you can't go wrong. And it just has such a great small town country feel to it that he brings to a lot of his work. Just a lot of fun. I really recommend, if you have not read the first series, you really need to pick it up before you dive into this. Will, you had mentioned something about, when we were talking about Supermassive, like, is it easy to pick up and jump into Supermassive if you haven't read anything before that? I don't think, in this case, that Man or Black you can jump in blind. I think you really do need to pick up Series 1, or Volume 1, which is available in trade, and get through that before picking this up, because otherwise you're going to be completely lost. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of characters that are introduced, and situations that happen that really kind of explain this book. But really great, Dark Horse Comics. Again, first issue is out. Second issue comes out in March.
All right, let's go over to Will. Will, tell us about a second book you're reading that you're digging.
Absolutely. So first of all, part of me picking the book that I did came from, I had a conversation with Bill earlier, like, hey, like a week or so ago, I was getting ready to go to the comic book shop, and I said, hey, what's good? What's been good recently? And he had recommended a few different titles to me. And one that I'd really like to talk about a lot is Barbalian Red Planet. So this is part of the Black Hammer series, which I haven't read, which is a shame because I am a huge Jeff Lemire stan. And knowing that he's sort of the architect for this alternate comic book superhero universe, it's 100% right up my alley. But what I love so much about this is that one of the things that I've done quite a bit in my movie side of life is, I've worked with a LGBTQ film festival, and really worked with a lot with kind of the advocacy of stories about queer people and the lives, the struggles, the stories that we've lived. And what I love so much about the story, a quick description of it, you've got this character from Mars who is, I mean, essentially, if you've read like anything with Martian Manhunter, this character is very much based off of like the archetype of Martian Manhunter. This is Mark Marks, an alien who has come to Earth and is this superhero named Barbalian in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. He is a cop by day and a superhero by when he's not being a cop. He can shapeshift, he can fly, he can do all of those things. That's, it's Martian Manhunter, right? But what I love so much about this story, and what I think really takes it to a very different level, is that he finds himself both caught up in a romance with an AIDS activist named Miguel, as well as having to find his own place in two different worlds, right? He's learning about himself as a queer character and learning about the way that he, as a police officer, as an authoritarian, interacts with these activists who are being pushed back against by the police, at the same time that he's dealing with persecution on Mars because of his family and like the way that, you know, his pacifism on Mars kind of affects like their culture. And what I love so much about this is it weaves these two stories together in a way that feels super heroic. It feels very tender and passionate, like during the scenes of like connection and love between these characters. And it also feels very much like a call to action in the way that that good stories about activism should. This is not a story about passive activism. This isn't a story about, you know, throwing a couple dollars in the kitty on Facebook and moving along or sharing that one link. This is about being willing to like get on the front lines and scrap it up for the causes that you believe in. And this character has to learn about that in a couple of different capacities. I haven't read the rest of the Black Hammer series. I come into this not knowing the rest of the world that's shaped by this. I can tell you this is a very complete story by itself. You don't need to know those other characters. They don't really appear in here at all. This is if you had told me that this was a one shot that was not part of a connected universe, I would 100% believe you. But I think especially for this audience, this is an LGBTQ podcast. This is, I almost feels like this probably goes into like a central reading category for me. So Bill, thank you for suggesting this when you'd read it. I didn't know that when I came on that this was, I picked up like a Hellfire Gala, like the second book. I was going to like, oh, I'll talk about some X-Men shit. But after you had suggested this and I read it, I was like, I have to tell everyone about this. This is a central reading.
And would you say, Will, that you've been, after reading this, you've been black hammed?
I've been black hammed. I am ham.
You're all in. You've been hammed.
I'm all in.
Bill, you could also just briefly show the other book that you had in your hand there, and this is testimony to how you have to listen to your friends, because that's a book, I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, that we almost spent an entire episode on, I think. And that came from...
Where's my copy?
That came from... Oh, mine's over there too, Steve. Don't worry about it. That came from a suggestion almost simultaneously from Caleb and from Steve to me. And I have preached the gospel for that one. So just keep this up, folks. If there's something you're digging, tell everybody about it. So, but I'm really glad that you enjoyed Barbalian. And one thing I would love to do, because since we're all digging... since we're all black hammed, or I thought black hammered would be a better.
I'm black hammered.
Yeah,
but I like the misspelling, the black hammed also.
Yeah,
you can maybe put an apostrophe.
Will, maybe you can come back on when you've done a little more legwork in the Black Hammer universe, and so we would love to talk about that, because there's so much we haven't talked about with that particular series, but it's been a favorite of ours and certainly a favorite creator of ours.
And shout outs to the creators, you know. So Jeff Lemire is the architect for this world, but Tate Brumble is the writer and did the writing with. And there's a little, I think it's an afterword by Tate, where basically Tate says, look, I approached Jeff with this idea, and Jeff said, great, you have the lived experience, you should write this. And to me, that is also that is important to me, because it not only, like, you know, I think this would have been a very easy one for someone with Lemire's pedigree to just sort of absorb under himself, but instead he used his pedigree to elevate something underneath a brand that he needed to. And of course, the art here, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, it's just delightful. Like, it feels like Lemire's art while also feeling like its own thing, and that's cool.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to put hands of Bible on this, but I do believe Gabriel is an LGBTQ creator as well.
Wonderful.
David also kind of agrees here. He just started mainlining the main Black Hammer book and loving it as much as he loved Barbalian. So yeah, I mean, Barbalian sounds like a really good entry point for somebody who hasn't had a chance to really delve into the Black Hammer universe and getting.
And I think when you do
Black
approach
Hammer.
that, it's like, oh, You're gonna have some of those moments, like, oh,
Well, and the book gives you a little bit of context to this one character, but that context is just a snippet of what you get in the main kind of Black Hammer universe. And so Will, for somebody like you who hasn't you haven't read a lot of it, just as in case anybody else hasn't, and you're wondering what is this, it's a shared superhero based universe that Jeff Lemire owns outright. But it was published at Dark Horse. Essentially, it's Jeff Lemire's love letter to the medium of comics. It doesn't matter what age. Bill and I have had this conversation. He does homages to the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, all of it, modern 90s stuff. This particular character, you hit the nail on the head. It's Martian Manhunter, but it's also John Carter of Mars. He just pulls anything and everything into it, and it's fascinating. Check out all. I Wish You Lived Closer. I would let you borrow my hardcovers. Also, you come into the show and you talk about Tony Fleece and you talk about Stray Dogs and Jeff Lemire. We might be in a relationship now. I don't know. So I just
this is our new polycule. Hey guys,
look, Texas, Arkansas, usually root for the same teams.
Yeah, not too far.
You're gonna be close. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be.
I'll be in Dallas next month. So.
Hey, there you go. That is not too far. Oh, love it, David.
I ship it.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about a second book you're reading that you're digging.
All right, I'll be real quick because I can get through this real quick. And I can't show you the cover because the cover is naughty. But about 2 weeks ago, the third volume of a series that I've loved outright, and honestly, I feel like I should be talking about the Dark Horse book here. I'm breaking the thread, but Faithless volume 3 came out. This is written by Brian Azzarello, drawn gorgeously by Maria Lovett. Came out of Boom Studios. If you've read this series at all, you know it's about this artist named Faith who essentially made a deal with the devil, not just in phrase, but the actual devil, and got into a relationship with the devil's daughter and the devil at the same time. And the devil in this series poses as this art rep. There's a little bit of life meets art all up in this book. I think in the second volume, she has her comeuppance moment. She makes this piece of art, which MoMA bought. Essentially, it's big doing. She was the hot flare, and then she disappeared. She had a breakdown. She went away for 9 months. Everybody thought she was dead, which added to the mystery and the mysticism of this thing. And it essentially picks up right there. She's been gone for 9 months. Some of her dear friends have been looking for her. One of which is this tangential character that you meet briefly in the first part of the series, and she finds out that her friend is still alive on the news. Like they're talking about this. And so she reaches out, and then 2 weeks later is allowed to come into this, essentially a compound, where Faith has been hanging out. The devil owns it, and again, like I said, he's not winged horns. He's just kind of a older, looks a little bit like Andy Warhol with black hair, kind of guy, who just is hanging out, being an art rep, being evil, but also just doing all kinds of other stuff. And he's got her sequestered in there, and she's not yet found herself. She's still kind of spaced out. So the friend goes in there and they talk, and she starts to come back to life a little bit and starts to find herself. And she starts to realize how much time has passed, how much the world has passed her by, because the last time she saw this friend, her baby was a toddler. Now her baby's in school. I mean, it's just and she starts to realize what all has gone on. But interestingly enough, this volume doesn't focus on Faith, who has been the main figure in the whole thing. It focuses on the friend as far as this first issue goes. The friend she's also a queer woman. She is a lesbian. And she and her wife are raising this baby, this child that dealing with school stuff and everything. And after she leaves the art compound, and she goes back to her life, she's trying to figure out what's what, and she misses her friend and she's worried. But she's got mom duties to do, right? So she picks up her kid. They're doing some shopping. Baby's got to go to the bathroom. So they dip into the restroom. Of course, her son is old enough that he's starting to realize, well, I don't want to go in the girls' bathroom. I want to go in the boys' bathroom because I'm not there's some gender dynamics at work there. And so she's just like, okay, like you go do your business. I'm talking to mom. like we'll just come out. Except when she's on the phone, she hears her son talking to something, a voice. And so obviously, as a parent, she becomes concerned and kind of goes in there, and she sees her son talking to a demon. To which she freaks out, screams. People come in, like they don't see anything. They think she's crazy. So she grabs her child, bolts out the door. And then that last moment, you see something in the mirror that scares the living hell out of me. I'll just put it that way. Like as a reader, I was like, oh, like shit. Like I am concerned with what's going to happen in this book. So absolutely loved it. If you've ever seen Maria Lovett's art, here's a safe page I can show you. Like this is what you're working with. It is some mix of, I don't even know really how to describe it. It's really hard to describe. It's a little bit Eduardo Riso, but looser and more degraded. But I mean that in a good way. So yeah, I don't know, but it is wonderful, and this book is no holds barred. There's some straight up. I was shocked because Boom is always like, they've always pushed the edges because they're a smaller publisher, but there's some straight up fucking in this book, and then some different kind of fun. This is some new shit. Some shit I ain't never seen before.
They do some interesting things. Yes.
Yeah, like it is out. Like I loved it. So yeah, can't wait to see what they do in this series.
So Caleb, I think after the first 2 volumes, I think for me, my interpretation is Lewis is definitely, if he's not the devil, he is a devil of some sort. And obviously his daughter is something as well. But it's interesting. 9 months. What other things kind of happen in 9 months? I don't know. It's an interesting time frame.
Shall is.
Okay.
Shall is.
Okay. For my last book, it's a little strange because this is a book that I bought the first issue, but I'm not going to continue with it. But I still think it's something the 3 of you and anyone else listening or viewing should sample because it's something very, very different. Will, I know you're a student of film, but I don't know how far back in time your interest lies. Are you familiar with movies from Senegal in the 70s, like Tokibuki and Kala?
I can't say that I am, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. All right. If y'all had as much gray as I have in my beard, you would have known that in the 80s there were some certain films that popped up in every like film class for a time, and the films that I mentioned, again, they're from Senegal. It's a very different way of narrative film storytelling. I liken it to films that were made pre-Glasnost in the Soviet Union. You watch them, and it's almost as if they're from another planet, because they don't hold to Western or Asian, I have to say, because really Japanese films are not as huge a puddle jump as the storytelling devices that you find in these. So it's a very different viewing experience. The editing is different, captions are remarkably different, pacing is different. It's just something that you have to see to experience. It's very difficult to put it into words, but it's very different. The book that I have is somewhat in that wheelhouse. It's a 6-issue series from Image. First issue is out, New Masters. I don't know if anybody has sampled or heard of this, but it is by a brother, Shobu, and another brother, Shof. Last name is Koki. And they have crafted this blend of science fiction, dystopian adventure, and Afrofuturism into this one book. They're brothers, and they're from Nigeria. And this is unlike, I think, any comic I've read.
Yeah.
It's just so different. So let me give you the story. Now, if you notice here, I'm kind of working on my other laptop because there was no way I could talk about this without having notes because there was a lot packed into. And one thing that's also wonderful about this is no ads. And I do think even if you had back matter material, it would have been something weird to the flow. So again, we're in a West Africa in the future, and the person on the cover, Ola, is a bit of an adventurer, and with her robot companion Ase, they are searching for an element known as obsidium. Now, again, the Earth that they are and where they live in is controlled by aliens. Um, it's never outwardly said, as far as I know, but you know it because of certain references. And again, that's part of the very unique storytelling that's within these pages of this book. So they're searching for this element called obsidium, and they know that if they find it, it's going to net them a very pretty penny. Now, considering where the creators are from, Nigeria, let's face it, that's the capital of scams. And that also plays really nicely into the storytelling devices that are here. So they find this obsidium. It's a bitch to mine, but they are able to do it. They make a very hasty getaway from certain forces, and they travel to Echo City to sell this illegal but very sought after product. Through a series of scams, her vehicle breaks down, and basically anything she made on the obsidium goes into the repair of her vehicle. But while they're in Echo City, you see what the remainder of the world is like. There's a governor who has realized that this obsidian supply has dried up, so that there is this intention to bargain with alien forces that also leads to an affair with an alien. This happens at breakneck speed, yet it's slow. It's so hard to describe. Uh, Over all of this, though, there is something called the Eye of Arun Milla that everyone, in a very sudden fashion, is going to mobilize to get. Um, I hope I've done it justice, so that there is some narrative thread through there. Like I said, it is so different from anything I've read recently. Um, the biggest problem that I've had with the book and why I won't be continuing with it, these are very colorful characters, but a very, to me, undefined plot, at least how it was presented within the first issue. It's very hard to establish a personal connection to the principal character. It just doesn't happen. At least it didn't happen for me. It's very hard to grab onto a singular thread in the story. Yet, I am so glad that I exposed myself to storytelling like this. Just in terms of the art, I'll just give you a couple of pages and you'll see how it's familiar yet different. Look at those hyenas. You've seen hyenas before. I don't think you've seen them look like that.
Mm-mm.
And this quasi watercolor style, and like I said, it's very different pacing. It's very different conceit of narrative. It's just so different. I wish I enjoyed it, but I'm glad I sampled it. And who knows, maybe one of the three of you may walk away from this and say, "Oh my God, I am hooked on this." And I do applaud Image because certainly West Africa is a region that, if you can name one creator out of that region that that is involved in the graphic novel or comic book world, we've all been reading comics. I can't think of a single one.
Right.
So I'm glad this is being published by a major publisher in the States, in Image. New Masters #1. Like I said, I'm not continuing with this, but I was glad that at least I had the first issue ride.
I ended up reading the first one of these mainly because you said like, "Hey, here's what I'm going to be talking about," and I had a little bit of time after work, so I'm like, "All right, I'll go on and give it a read." And I had a very similar takeaway from you. There are kind of three stories that happen at the same time. This is a very narratively dense story. There's not a lot of breathing room. You have this character that kind of like the title character here, and I think there's definitely elements. You mentioned the Afro futurism. You kind of see some elements that feel like sort of like, not to be too reductive, but like Rey's story from like at the beginning of like the Star Wars Force Awakens. You get to see a little bit of that in here, in a world that also blends some things that feel very both Blade Runner, but also Valerian and the City of Thousand Planets. But all of that then molded through this Afrofuturistic storyline. There's a lot going on here. And the one thing that I really wish from it is that at a certain point, we stop following the main character and then we follow two other stories that bounce back and forth. And we never really come back to the main character. And I really wish that the first issue had just really focused on one thing, maybe showing a couple of small interludes, and then maybe fleshed out the world more in the future books. I'm going to give it a second book just because there's enough like foundational stuff that I'm interested, but at the same time, like I'm with you. Like I need there to be some like quick momentum with the characters to really stay on it.
Yeah, that's
the
art.
Like
I was going to say that's often something you see when you've got these when you've got creators making a book and they don't know if they're going to get another issue, or you see that in Kickstarter books all the time. They don't know if they're going to get a second arc or even if they're going to get canceled after the first or second issue. So they try to stick as much of their story in there. Number one, so it's copywritten and nobody can take it. Number two, just because if they do, they can pick up and play with it later. So I have a feeling that's probably what it is. I want to get a hold of this book badly. I wish Comixology wasn't shit.
Yes, I read on Comixology, and that may have also had like impacted the reading experience. Disclaimer. There is a panel early on. You mentioned like the art style, Bill. There's this part where she's like jumping through this like sewery underwater thing, and they do this like light streak thing behind her. Yeah, right where it says and there's like this light streak behind her, and that I found so inventive and so
right there.
Yeah. Like that was immediately like this is the signature of this book. Like, you know, the story great, yes, but like that art style felt like it was both something that I could relate to as a comic book fan, but also it felt fresh, it felt original. So I definitely see the creative talent here. Maybe it just needs a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah.
Well, and other people see the creative talent as well, because as David Toby put in the chat, these creators are the winners of the last Creators for Creators grant. So that's awesome.
Right. And, you know, again, something happened and a click went off on a light bulb in my head, and I became very DC-centric in my tastes when the pandemic hit, because I guess that's comfort food, and I like comfort food. But I would rather that there were 100 of these than 100 Ghost Rider number ones. You know,
I've got to read that.
I'd rather the material that I don't connect with, that is inventive and is trotting very different ground than I'm used to. I'm comforted knowing this is out there. And maybe these brothers would craft something that I would connect. This wasn't it, but again, I'm glad I went through the experience. Okay, well, it's it's late, so we are going to wrap this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar here, where we woof at something that may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, it comes no surprise to anybody. It is a TV show, of course. This one actually just started this past week on the channel that nobody seems to have, Epics. And it is the new series From. And From is created by John Griffin and the Russo brothers producing it. Basically, the best way to describe it, it's like Lost meets Salem's Lot, where a family is seemingly trapped in a town, along with a lot of other people that have been there for much longer than they have. Where there's no way in. No, there's obviously a way in, but there's no way out. And at night, creatures come out to hunt. It's very creepy, very atmospheric. There's a lot of really interesting stories that I know that they can tell with this. And a lot of excitement, too. This is one of those shows where they don't have to show a lot. They do. There is some gore, but you get the goosebumps, the raised hairs, just by watching and it's really fun. You get to see the excitement. So it's on Epix on Sunday nights. The first 3 episodes are available free if you have their streaming service. But otherwise, I do recommend it if you can watch it. Outside of the U.S., it is airing on Netflix. So those lucky people who don't have Epix here but have Netflix outside, enjoy. Check it out.
Awesome. Let's go over to Will. Will, what is your wolf of the week?
Yeah, you know, I got to do a movie, right? So one that I think is not getting enough people talking about it, and that's a shame because it's pretty damn good for what it is the new Soderbergh film, which is on HBO Max. It's called Kimmy. And it's a story, very Rear Window-ish. There's this girl, this woman, she works for a company that sort of does like, they're the people that troubleshoot when there's an error message with like this world's version of Siri. Sorry, I just screwed up everyone's automatic devices in their houses. But it's called Kimmy in this world, and she also is. This is in the pandemic. And so she is agoraphobic. Something's happened at the beginning of the pandemic. She just doesn't feel comfortable going out into the world. It causes great agitation for her. But she comes across something in one of these recordings that she has to do sort of like error logging for that sounds like it's a pretty heinous crime. And she's sort of like in a race against like the clock and some kind of bad actors who are kind of coming after her to try to get this information in the right people's hands. So think a little bit Rear Window, the first part of it, because she's very much inside there. A little bit maybe Run Lola Run, but all of this with like that Soderbergh twist. It's on HBO Max. It's a pretty brisk little watch. It gets a little, the ending of it's not maybe perfect, but that first part is so damn good. I'd really recommend it.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
First off, the unmute button. My wolf. So I have a mini wolf of the week that goes out to this post that I just saw. It's from Tom Taylor. I don't know if you guys can see it. It just says dark side visit. And he said it. It said new news coming soon, and he hashtagged the Trinity. So I don't know what that means, but that makes me very excited from him. So my wolf of the week, outside of Will for joining us and being delightful, thank you, and talking about amazing things, I really appreciate it, goes to a comic that is one of my favorite things right now, and it's a comic that really probably doesn't need the extra boost, but I'm going to give it to it anyway, and that is Thor. That's obviously from Marvel Comics. It's being written by Donny Cates, drawn by Nick Klein with colors by Matt Wilson. This particular arc that's going on right now is called The God of Hammers. Without spoiling anything, essentially, he picks up on things that were left off by Jason Aaron's run when Jason Aaron threw Mjolnir into the sun that was attached to a particular villain that he had to fight with. And these things are coming back to haunt everyone. Obviously, right now, Thor is the king of Asgard. He's taken his father's place. His father is playing a big role in this book, and there's father-son issue dynamics going on. The art is wonderful. The story that he is telling, that Donny Cates is telling, is amazing. Donny Cates' mind fascinates me because I don't he is an incredibly adept writer, but I've never seen Marvel let anybody play with and create things the way that he does. Like, the dude is dropping key. Like, if you're a key issue person, you're keeping up with Donny Cates because he's dropping key issues every 5 minutes. But in this particular, the last issue, which was issue 22, a major thing happens with Thor's life. I mean, like 4 major things happen in his life, but you also get to see Beta Ray Bill jump in and be awesome. You essentially get the Avengers come in and help him out with this crisis, as Mjolnir has essentially gained sentience and is its own thing. And I'll just let you kind of work with that if you haven't read it. So go read Donny Cates and Nick Klein's Thor. It's one of the best things at Marvel right now.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to need Steve's assistance because the Wolf of the Week that I'm talking about, there is no physical version as of yet. So I need a graphic, and just there's nothing I can show, and it's not like a film or TV program that I can talk about. But this is a new album by the Chicago band Sonny Veneer, and it's entitled Doves and Herons, and it's available on Spotify and iTunes and a platform that I had never used before, Deezer. And especially if you want to kind of avoid Spotify, this is a very nice alternative for particular streaming. The band's been around Chicago for a while, but since 2019, the drummer has been Wendy Freeman, who has been on this show and is basically the closest that the Comic Book Bears have to a Goldilocks.
Yep.
So it really is a wonderful album. I played it twice today. If you are in the Chicago area, the band is working on a release, and if you're wondering what the sound is like, I'm going to be tagging on a song in the outro for the audio version. And if you're a fan of lo-fi indie rock, and not so much like Pavement, but more like Beat Happening and the Go Team, acts like that from the 90s. As I told Wendy, this should have been on K Records. That should give you an idea of what this sounds like. I absolutely loved it. And Wendy, I'm very happy that this came out. And the only reason that I didn't make a purchase is I'm saving my dollars for the CD or vinyl version, which will eventually happen once they get over the record store day. Vinyl glut. So very happy that this is out there. Again, Sonny Veneer's new album, Doves and Herons. So, all right.
Yeah,
that's it.
Co-signed. Love it.
And I did get a ping from our friend Chris Cummins, and he said we did neglect to say something in our discussion of stray dogs, and that's that Tony Fleeks can get it. Well, we should mention that as well.
We'll put that in our Woofs of the week, right?
All right, Will, thank you so much for joining us again. We love having you, and please extend. And I know you guys are actually going to be in person together soon. Please give my best to Brad and Jim, and everybody. If you haven't sampled the Movie Bears, forget about movie podcasts or bear podcasts. It's one of the best podcasts out there.
Yeah.
It is always on my stack. Even when I don't get to it, eventually there's a binge. And if I can just plug certain episodes, what you guys did when the pandemic first hit and there were no new movies coming out apart from shit like Trolls tour, it was few and far between there for about 2.5 months. You hit some specialty episodes, and I particularly love those of just, you're going to keep this going even though the main mechanism that you usually have on hand isn't there. And I'm still hoping someday you guys will do that beach blanket profile that you can drag me into.
We really need to, there's going to be a time for it, right? Because there's these little gaps in the year where it's not Oscar movie time, it's not summer blockbuster time, it's drop season. And those are the times where we like going back and looking at like older films, doing like you mentioned at the beginning of the pandemic, we reached back and just found a bunch of like comfort films. And because we needed them. And so we did some shows where we just talked about things that made us happy because that's what we had the energy for at the time. And I think our audience did too. But yeah, like a specialty thing on Beach Blanket would be a lot of fun, especially, I mean, now it's maybe a little too late right now because we have to catch up. But like, honestly, this time of year right now, when there's just a bunch of crap getting released, it'll probably be okay.
And just on the topics of movies, were there any Oscar snubs that surprised you?
I wanted to see way more. I'm a Wes Anderson fan. I wanted to see way more The French Dispatch in there.
Oh yeah,
that was almost criminal for me. And gosh, I feel like I as with every year, anything that is horror or horror adjacent seems to get like really fiercely snubbed. I think back to like Toni Collette getting like nothing for Hereditary, and I really would have loved to have seen something more along the lines of like I think The Green Knight deserved way more than it got, even though it's not straight horror. There are definitely those elements to it that I think were a little off-putting to people, but that's the type of stuff that really like captures my attention, the stuff that like shocks and awes me, and it never really makes it to that tier.
Okay, great. My snubs were the Sparks Brothers for documentary and Ruth Nega for passing. I was shocked she wasn't nominated.
I was very surprised she didn't,
Yeah.
because she was one of the people you always hear kind of like the same five names in the lead up to nomination time, and you generally know who it's going to be, and she was one of the ones that got pushed out for another candidate. Yeah, I was surprised about that. Sparks Brothers, that one, such an amazing film. I remember that was one I got to see at Sundance last year, because they did it virtual, so I got to actually do Sundance, and it was so nice to sort of get to see that one do the rollout and start to see people like latch onto it. And yeah, it's very weird. Like, there's some other great documentaries in that category too. It's hard to decide, but like that one, I was surprised didn't make it further.
Yes, in some way, I think Summer of Souls' appearance was kind of like, okay, there's one rock movie in there. You can have two.
You can have. I mean, you can have. So I've recently started, Bill, and you'd appreciate this. I recently started screening for a music film festival. And so all of the films are music related or music documentaries. I did that last year. It's you have to be in sort of like Minnesota or Texas to it, because it's more of a local festival. But Sound Unseen and there's so many really good music documentaries that come out each year, and only a couple of them bubble into the either like the main like populace or into awards ceremony. And it's that's also criminal, right? But you can have more than one.
Yeah. And some that I'm looking forward to right now is I Am a Cliche, about polystyrene, and
it's very good.
And Red Elvis, which I understand is streaming right now for free on the what's the great course is called now? Knowledge Stream or something?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the
something stream. But that's
Curiosity
out there.
Stream?
Curiosity Stream.
Yeah, Curiosity Stream. Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna do one of those like free for 7 days.
that polystyrene doc is 100% the goods. Bill, I when I saw that one, I did think like this is a Bill movie. So
Awesome. When I had 5 minutes with Grant Morrison, that's what we talked about.
Yes.
Was X-ray specs.
Yes.
So. Pretty cool. All right, guys. Again, we're wrapping this up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. Oh, Will, just if people want to reach out to you, where can they do that? Let me get that in there before we sign off.
Yeah, find us. Our website is moviebearspodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook at Movie Bears Podcast, Twitter at MB Podcast. You can also find me, aside from that, just where I talk about random crap. I'm at Whatever Cove on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook, William Lindus. I'm on TikTok. I'm the Movie Bear. I'm just all over social media, because that's just, I don't know, it's just who I am. But yeah, find me and find the show on those different things. Connect with us. Tell me what movies you like the best, and I'll tell you. I'll talk your ear off about movies. So
awesome. So again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can get us through Apple Podcasts, through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you are watching us on our live stream, thank you for joining us through this evening. If you are watching us later on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe and leave a good review, because as we say each time out, we're trying to improve our presence on that platform, especially after being an audio podcast only for so long. It's still a new world to us, and we want to reach as many people as we possibly can with our bearish goodness and good looks and all that. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Woof.
Bye. Woof. Bye.